our endpoint by using API Gateway. And I know that I've now pivoted to using a video instead of the step-by-step instructions. And if you are following along, then you should be able to pick up on how to do the search in here. So we're going to follow these steps that I got ChatGPT 01 model to print out for me. Sometimes they're good instructions, sometimes they're not, just FYI. But because I've vetted these, I know that they're good. So this is just another way that you can help yourself. And if you get stuck, you can always ask ChatGPT, how do I get this part done? That's why I include the names of the steps that we're doing within the instructions. With that said, okay, so we're going to create a new API. So this is the part for the API. So we go to the AWS Management Console, that's this. We navigate to API Gateway. So we can type it into our search. I myself prefer to I copy this and then I open a new window so that I don't have to continually go back and forth. So I'm just all I did was take the URL from any one of these. That way I don't have to sign back in and out or click around. For me, it's just easier. You don't have to do it this way. Oops, sorry. We go into the search here, API Gateway, okay, and then you can see it right here at the very top. We are going to be making a REST API, which is right here. We're going to create a new API, which is right here. And then we give it a meaningful name. I'm calling it Simple Brighter Pets. Brighter Pets. 4.0 mini API, because I sometimes might go back and do something more complex and then I want to keep track of which ones I made. So this is just a simple chat. If I was going to add vision or voice or some other multimodal capability, then I don't want to get confused with what I'm doing here, which is why. And you can also add the description, but then you have to read through everything. So that's why I just name them this way. So then this one is for a simple chat AI agent that connects to Brighter Pets. Okay. And the reason why I'm just calling it Brighter Pets here is because now I can connect any of my chats that I would want in my Brighter Pets website to this Lambda, and I don't have to recreate my Lambda every time, because over here, if we look at, oops, this is the wrong one, apologies. Okay, so if we look at our code, which is, let me get that up for you, which is right here, right? This is the website that we're using as the template. So this one is my sales agent, and because I added the prompt that I wanted to use in this side of the code, I can create another version of this page, and maybe on another page I want to sell toys for cats, right? And so then I'm able to use the same Lambda. All I do is change the HTML, which is this stuff right here. All I do is change my HTML. So I'm dyslexic, that's why all of this has all these colors. If you're interested in understanding how to set this stuff up, let me know and I'll create another digital downloadable course for that. It does come in handy. When I've worked with data scientists, they are not usually aware of how to use this. So I know that one of the really valuable things that they have found is in being able to use the marketplace, which is this, and this is what tells you exactly which plugins I'm using. Okay, so this is the stuff that I've installed, and these are the things that make it easy for me to read this. But if you're not intending to be a full-fledged developer, I would not spend my time trying to figure this out. This is just in case you're curious. Over here on the right hand side is what's called code cursor, which overlaps onto VS Code, and this lets me be able to ask it questions, like highlight whatever I have a question on, right? And then I add it to the chat over here. It puts the code in here, and then I can ask GPT 4.0 or whichever model I want over here. the same question that I would ask it if I was dumping stuff back into ChatGPT. This has the same costs. If I'm using the API, I'm able to put in an API key just like we did earlier, or I can just pay Code Cursor an extra however many dollars if I run out of calls to through their API. And I know that I'm kind of derailing a little bit, so apologies for that. And that's why I tend to want to do the picture by picture, but it's when I'm recording the videos that I remember stuff that might be really helpful for you. But I will try to stay focused on the fact that right now what we're making sure that we can do is talk to our website. So again, the reason why I laid it out like this was because my expectation is that this is a first step for people either that are already in software, that are learning how to do the one basic thing that is probably going to be the most valuable, as I've traversed from writing code in Python to full stack to web developer to Python, developer to engineer. Well, yeah, always engineer, and then architect. Like all of these skills are collapsing, but these are the ones that I've abstracted that are the most valuable. So but if you're a web developer that is seeing the writing on the wall and you're transitioning into something that is going to keep you employed, because that has been one of the questions I've been asked the most, like this is the stuff that matters the most, in my opinion. Not all companies are going to ask you to write to an API, but most, if you want a job at a company, most of them will. And the other beauty about this is that right now we are making our calls to OpenAI API, and this will be the last thing I show you in terms of the group of people that are doing this because they want to stay relevant in the software world, right? So right now our API is using the OpenAI API, which is, here's our lambda function. Right now we're using the OpenAI API, right? And you can tell because it's right here. And we have this completion right here. This is the way you make the calls to OpenAI. However, if I was going to use Llama, I would just change the query that I'm running. If I was going to use Anthropic, I would just change the query that I'm running. So you never have to worry about that because the rest of the code here is handled the same way, regardless of which API you're sending your web page to. Okay, so that's why we are making sure that our website can talk to AWS, because now we have a lot of functionality. And then the next part that is really important is that you get to own all your own data. So because you signed up for this course knowing that this was in preparation for AGI, our agents are set up this way. And that's what I was explaining in the instructions, was that I would want the web page name inside of where I'm storing this data. That's why I store it this way with the full name, because if I have that page and then I have my cat toys page, right? Each task that has to do with dogs will know that this is the exact place that it got the data from. Each task that had to do with people wanting cat toys will know that it came from the other page. If at some point I want someone to be able to talk to my entire website without me having to worry about further complications with RAG, which is augmented retrieval, then I can just make an orchestrator agent which can ask each of these smaller page agents, like which of these is the most relevant for you to go get information from for my user. So if I have multiple pages, right, with different products or different ways of categorizing things, then in my home page, which would have been, in my case, it's going to look something like this, right? And this chatbot here is what is being replaced with the specific one for right now the dog shoes. But if at some point I wanted my home page to have a whole bunch of information there, then I could have the one chatbot that talks to all the other chatbots. And I'm calling them chatbots because that's the word we're seeing here, but these are AI agents that are prepping to be reasoners. The way to make them reasoners is by collecting your data. The way to maximize on supply chain optimization, on what is it called? Forecasting, like understanding your market and when people might be ordering things and keeping up with trends, is through forecasting. So if I live in Seattle, I'm probably gonna need more dog shoes for the rain than if I live in Colorado and I need dog shoes for climbing mountains, or maybe hunting shoes for dogs if I live in mid Texas, right? So those are very obvious. I'm picking those examples because they're obvious. But if I'm a bakery and I think that people tend to order one thing or another during a season or another, the big shift that I saw working in these e-commerce companies was that assuming that you understand what happens at each point in time in your sales funnel and in your net gains and in your costs is probably the biggest eye-opening opportunity by gathering your data this way. So right now we're clearly just making a simple sales AI agent that is created to help your client make the decision to buy your product because you know that you were giving them something good that is worthy of value for them, right? So what we're doing here is we are setting ourselves up to be able to help them, and then also keep more of our money in our pockets, decrease our costs because we're smarter about what we buy, when we buy it, and then understand the trickle effect of what might be a good time to buy. So for example, some women, we buy a whole ton of winter clothes in the summer because we know that it's brand name clothes that is more affordable, brand new, or used. I prefer used because it's better for the planet, but you're able to capitalize on insights like those that you might not otherwise, right? Or if I know that during, let's say that there's a harvest season for, if I'm a bakery, there's a harvest season for wheat in the early fall. Well, I know that I'm probably going to get better prices for wheat when it's plentiful, right? Or I think I am. But what if that is not the case? What if when the end of the season is coming and I start to see in my data that actually wheat is much cheaper towards the middle of a harvest season because it turns out that the suppliers are trying to get rid of it so they can make room in their warehouses for new wheat. So I hope that those two like very simple examples help you understand the difference between coding to make something happen, right? Which is just making people come to your website, and then coding with the agent opportunity here where the agent is actually talking back and forth to your clients and is created for the purpose of selling. That it's your sales guy, right? It's your guy at the counter, your woman at the counter, or your non-binary at behind the counter, whatever, however you want to think of that, right? It's the person that's making the sale is your chatbot. That's why it has the prompt that it does. Those are proven prompts to generate a better user experience because it helps the user stay focused, FYI. Okay, and then now we have this interconnected web inside of our own website that is already very much created with SEO and GEO in mind. I have a bunch of extra freebies and tips and tricks inside of the code that you can, if you attend any of the workshops, like I can walk through that, but also it's written in the comments. So the comments are this stuff right here. You can read through the code and there's stuff in the comments that will tell you, like if you do this, it's more likely to get a sale. So for example, if we look at our code, actually it's in this one, right? So like all of this stuff here, this is what the GEO or the AI search engines use to be able to find you more easily. So that makes you more findable, including your URLs makes you more findable because it increases your SEO. This type of JSON schema makes you more easy to be found because you're speaking the language of the AI. Right? If you use WordPress, I don't think you get this kind of granular level of control. You might, I don't know, or probably someone will come up with some plugin that's amazing and can connect everything and good for them, but then you're stuck with a WordPress website that is harder to fix. And if something happens to the plugin, then you have to go into WordPress and update everything, and that takes hours sometimes, and it could break everything. And also, you have to pay for these plugins usually once a year. And then what happened to me was I had a lot of WordPress websites, and something infiltrated the cPanel or the server, and then everything was infected. So even if I had my own server, there was no guarantee that all of the infection would be removed. And if I needed to restore, then none of the restore had been working through GoDaddy. And even if I did restore, there was no way to nail down which of the websites it was that had the virus, nor how to isolate the virus without paying at least $30 per month per website each time for every month for every website where I wanted more protection. And even then, it was not guaranteed protection. So I said I was going to not go in the weeds. I think I'm just going to post this on YouTube so that people understand kind of like the reasoning behind why I'm doing this. And the value of owning your own data is the same thing as if I own my own real estate. And I know there's a lot of gurus out there that are talking about don't buy real estate. That's the worst thing you can do. Well, I'm here to tell you that during other like collapses, like the market crash, during other times, I've been able to buy houses, including if you're a veteran, you get this thing called a second tier entitlement, which I got. Having ownership of real estate has saved me multiple times. And there's an amazing book called Stop Sitting on Your Assets that describes why you should never have equity inside your house anyway. So you should be owning your own real estate, and you should not have any stake inside of the actual real estate. So to basically copy that paradigm and dump it into what it means to own digital real estate and success metrics. I mean, I'm doing well. I didn't get any of my real estate through divorces or suing people or anything like that. I legit just made smart decisions that were probably not normal looking to the people on the outside, right? But that made sense. I had the critical thinking skills that make sense. And if you're here, you probably also have like very high critical thinking skills and an aptitude for understanding when something is an opportunity, right? So for example, here I own the traffic, I own the data, I own the SEO, I own the opportunity to push traffic in whatever direction I want. This helps me with the traditional SEO on the way Google and such, the way Google runs right now, up until 2024. This other stuff helps that also, but it also helps the AI search engines. And in my case, because I'm an AI specialist, an AI automation specialist, architect, all these words right here. See, like I'm able to add this into all my keywords. So then my name over here is continually tied in the internet to that key identifier, right? So I'm not saying that anybody else is gonna take it to the extent that I've taken it, but these are some of the reasons why. And I don't think I finished closing the loop on why it's important to do this, because this is all HTML. It's a tiny file. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny file that fits inside of my drive. So if anything happens to my server on GoDaddy, I nuke my entire server, and I would know if there was any kind of virus in my HTML, because this is it. Like that's all that it looks like, and HTML is quite easy to read. You can dump HTML into ChatGPT, or I say ChatGPT because I'm partial, but any of the AI models, and it'll help you figure out what you need to do to fix it very easily, very quickly. It's a lot more lean, so the size of your code print is a lot smaller. So once we start using post-quantum cryptography keys, you'll be able to fit your keys into your stuff a lot easier. We don't really know what that's going to look like yet. I did write a thesis on it, so I am a world expert, you could say, in post-quantum cryptography, and no one's coming to save you. There is some really weak cryptography in the works. Post-quantum crypto is going to be bigger and bigger and bigger and more important, especially as AI rolls out. Quantum cryptography is really hard to understand. It's really hard to know what the right type of keys are to use, and we don't know how AI is going to evolve with that, but you still want to make sure that you're able to stick it into your code, because the reason why it's better to have a small code size versus these very elaborate and fancy, like React and Node and stuff kinds of websites, is because those keys are enormous. So they have a hard time existing safely through the internet because the packets are so many that they drop, right? It's like having a It's like having too many groceries in your paper bag. Like they'll fall through and they'll fall through and they'll fall through. That's kind of how the internet carries packets. So that's why I also decided this. And then, like I said, if something happens security wise to my entire websites, I just like delete everything in my server and then I upload everything again from my drive. And the reason it matters for SEO and why it mattered when I had WordPress was WordPress, the articles get put into the Google memory, right? Like, or Wayback Machine, or whichever AI search engine, or whichever is being crawled. So when I was able to fix some of the broken WordPress websites with the help of GoDaddy, I was not able to get back all my articles. And I did not have a good system in place for keeping track of what they were called. So if your articles were on Google and then they disappear, that's a hit on your SEO. And this way I have copies of everything ever. And it's so cheap to store them, and they store like right off of my drive. So that's the explanation behind the architecture. I think someone is going to steal my architecture. It's just a matter of time. It's not a big deal to me. I'm here for, the opportunity to thrive along with everybody else. And as easy as it would be to, just like lift this and steal it, I also think that there's going to be more and more and more and more that comes up, right? So the more that stuff rolls out, the more I inject into my own clients' web pages and my own web pages. So if you're somebody that's creative and intelligent and already a logical, critical thinker, then there's no such thing as somebody stole my idea, because you're always going to think of the next better idea anyway. And this is about helping as many people as possible thrive, right? And that is why we include in our prompt right here. So now I've gone back full circle to where I started going on and on. So now we go back to full circle, and here we have our guardrail, which basically says, like, as you're returning the message, make sure that you don't say anything that has anything other than we're talking about dog shoes on this page, right? So when people talk about like, oh, Leah and whomever and Leopold, like they told us the world was gonna come to an end. Well, yeah, like it's pretty easy to solve it this way. Like just clean the message each time. It's called data cleaning, just clean it up every time. Not a big deal. But you do want to, so in our case, we are actually directing it to use a selling strategy that is intended to invoke the desire to buy in people. All right, so I am not going to re-record this, but I am going to stop this one and upload this one, and then I will add a different one that talks strictly about our Lambda function.